Oh, hello there, and welcome to Phil Talking 20. So, you find me today talking to you about why combat is cool in Pathfinder 2e. And when I mean cool, I mean really cool. It's got a meta to it. Meta is a dangerous word in roleplay terms, but what I mean by meta is it's got it's got a whole system that you can grow and develop in and kind of learn and master, which as a player and as a DM is super cool. And I'm going to kind of touch on the basics of why it's cool as is, and then in another follow-up video, because this is part one, I'm going to kind of talk about how we can do things to make it cooler. Not that it's not cool enough, because like I said, with the core rules, you've already got some really cool kind of creativity to think like a combatant. Now, I've mentioned in previous videos that you should never try and be too realistic with your tabletop fantasy or even sci-fi or any other form of RPG adventure shenanigans. But there's still a case for having a bit of grounding in a good bit of realism and a good bit of kind of, well, kind of thought process behind why you're doing what you're doing in combat. It's often been in many systems, Pathfinder 1, 5th edition, 3.5 for the D&Ds, and 4th edition, there's always been that metric of I'm getting into combat, I'm rolling some dice, and I'm making my attacks, and the more attacks I make, the better. And that can be true, but what the 3-action system of Pathfinder 2 gives us is real economy to be smart in a fight. And that is exciting. So when you watch a lot of if you watch a boxing match, they very rarely want to stand and trade, especially at kind of the heavier weights, because you don't want to give someone the opportunity to land a critical blow, a critical hit, and knock you out. That you see a lot of movement and dynamic kind of engagement where you will close and lob a barrage and then disengage. You don't want to stand and get hit. You don't want to be stationary. But in a lot of systems, 5e to an extent, but also Pathfinder 1 and 3.5, we had the kind of the crusher against mobility, which was the attack of opportunity, which often bogged down combat massively into almost kind of slightly dumb, simplistic kind of I roll to hit, I roll to hit, I roll to hit. It's the end of my round. Next round, someone else rolls to hit, rolls to hit, rolls to hit. Their round rolls to hit, rolls to hit, rolls to hit, and so on. And that's fine. That's not bad or rubbish. I'm just saying that in the bigger combats and in longer combats, you can suddenly go from being excited to frustrated or bored, especially when you play with someone like me, who in 3.5 had a very high level epic, well, he got to epic level ranger, who had 12 attacks, which was really cool the first time. But then even for me as the munchkin, I can tell you, 11 attacks, it's pretty damn dull. And you see diminishing returns again in Pathfinder 2, in 3.5, in Pathfinder 1, in 5th edition. You get that scaling effect where you see that fall in your ability to sustain your highest base attack value. It gets knocked down. Very much in 3.5, very much in Pathfinder 1, and also here in 2e, because there are diminishing returns. And I think that's also the kind of the developers kind of going, don't just keep doing this, try something else. Now, it was harder in other systems to quote unquote try something else, because a lot of the time, especially in Pathfinder 1 and 3.5, everything attack of opportunity. I'm going to move, attack of opportunity. I'm going to, scratch my bum, attack of opportunity. I'm going to get out a map and read the map or a newspaper while I wait for someone else's turn, attack of opportunity. And so you did get locked into this kind of enforced meta of thinking, oh, I've just got to keep running attacks. That's why I'm here. So why is 2E different? Ba-ba! Not because of that. That was just me adding sound effects because my budget is so low that I have to add them myself. The reason is, and it's very, very cool, you're in combat and you are charged and your character is critical hit. Bam, he takes a lot of damage and you're looking at your character sheet and you're thinking, I've not got many hit points left and it's about to be my round. What do I do? Now, normally you've got that, I could take a 5-foot step. You know, it's now called a guarded step in 2E, which I prefer. Same function, you step 5 feet, but it's guarded, which is why it doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity like other movements do. Now, if you're fighting in 2E, lesser foes, so foes that aren't dedicated to the martial path, they're not professional fighting, creatures, so they're not honed into combat completely. Quite often they don't have the special ability, attack of opportunity. So you can actually break out of a combat and create space and not kind of worry that suddenly a lion is going to be a very capable and experienced combatant and be able to attack you as you move and disengage. Because most things, when you think about the practicalities of the fierceness and the kind of the wildness of combat, especially with swords, it's not pleasant. You know, when you go to cut with a sword, you're there and they're there, and it's visceral. Let's be perfectly clear. Now, obviously, it's a tabletop game, so we don't have to deal with the viscera. But I'm sure you've watched Game of Thrones or Lord of the Wrongs. Although we've all seen the goblin get its head cut off, or someone in Game of Thrones be like cut down with a sword. We know, deep down, we all know. So you do have automatically baked in some freedom and liberty to be a bit more disengagey, to create kind of movement, which is brilliant if you're a range character, because it means you can be a bit more focused on being the master of the bow, like Legolas, where he's dancing back and loosen off those arrows to take people out as they try and close on them in combat. But you can also be a bit kind of savvier and a bit cleverer when you're actually in the fight toe-to-toe with someone that is capable. So an opponent that does have attack of opportunity, which the ones that are geared up for combat normally do, because like the character classes like fighter and barbarian and champion that get it at later levels, you do get that attack opportunity and you can use it to, quite devastating effects. It's an extra attack at your highest base attack. And as we've seen with previous videos, we know that the barbarian and the champion and the fighter become expert, and they become master and they become legendary with their proficiencies, which massively buff up their ability to massively increase their chances of rolling a successful hit, and also increase their chances of rolling critical hits, because we have this fantastic system of beat by 10 to score a critical. Their armor class is 15, you need to get a total of 25 or more critical hit, double damage. So roll 2 dice, double what you add if you're using 1 dice. If you're using a magical weapon, magical weapons, because it's fantasy. Ooh. Imagine some kind of amazing fantasy background behind me at this stage. We're in that forest. We've got that magical sword, magical longsword. Longsword's going to be a topic in video 2. Just for a quick spoiler alert, or I don't know what you call that, a leak? Would you call that a leak? Well, I'm leaking it, so it's not a leak. It's me telling you. But anyway, so what happens? D8 longsword, is it? We'll talk about that in the next vid. But if you've got a +1 rune on it, there's 2 kinds of runes. They're fundamental runes. That's going to get complicated. We'll probably cover that in more detail in another video. But just to make it simple, if you get the right kind of magical weapon, it adds an extra damage die. So it becomes 2d8 for a +1 wounding weapon, which is pretty cool. And then you have all the other classic kind of abilities like flaming and shocking and all those other kind of things. They're still in there. Like I said, that's kind of a later date video in more specifics on magic weapons and why they're cool, because they're wicked. But that's a lot of potential damage output. Again, factored into the balance of the game. But it's very cool because normally we're all used to, oh, I've got a +1 magic weapon. Well, the base +1 magic weapon is still the classic +1 on user hit rolls. But with the next step up from that, you get that extra damage dice, which is very funky, especially if you're a cheesemonger munchkin and you do that to a great axe, and that's then a 2d12 great axe. Scary times, especially if it crits you, because that's 4d12. And if they've got a strength of 18, that's 4d12 plus 8. And you're only going to one place, and that's Owl Towers, where you've been booked into the presidential suite of, oh my god, I just got my ass kicked. So you can see why suddenly you might want to start thinking, oh, 3 action economy, how can I be smarter? So the worst case scenario has happened. The enemy barbarian has charged your PC and he's got this +1 magical axe 2d12 and he's crit you. And although you're quite a high level character, he's absolutely mullered you. And you've taken a huge chunk of damage and you're looking at your character sheet and you're saying, if he unloads on me for another round because he's moved, he's thrown his crit bomb at me, and then he's taken a second hit at me, but maybe we got lucky and with the -5 penalty, he didn't hit, hopefully. So we're still standing, but we know now we're locked man to man, face to face, the close combat duel to the death. First one to die loses, the worst kind of scenario. And it's probably going to be you because you've just been crit by a great axe and you're now looking really, really, really ropey. The healer can't get to you. He's bogged down. He's tied down in something. And you can't just go, I'll drink a potion, because he's going to go, oh, I'm high enough level to have an attack opportunity. That's an interact action. Smash. Now you're definitely going down. So what can you do? Oh, I could just take a 5-foot step. Yeah, you could. But then he can take a 5-foot step. And if you're a fighter, no attack opportunity. So you're not taking full advantage of your combat professionalism. So what do we need to do? Well, luckily, our character has a weapon with the shove trait. Why is that lucky? I'll tell you. So we are wielding, for all intents and purposes, a hammer. A light hammer has the shove trait. I mean, if you've only got simple weapons proficiency, you still can get hold of this weapon trait because you can have a light mace that has agile, finesse, and shove. So it means you can use your dex with it because of finesse. If you are not a strength character, you're a dex character. Agile means that on the second and third attack, instead of being -5, it's -4 and then -8. Very cool because it's light and it's agile. Ooh, flavor. And then the shove quality means that you don't have to have free hands, because this is like one of the little kind of niche mechanics where obviously if you shove someone, I mean, I always think about shoving someone in a combat situation as I'm probably more inclined to drop my shoulder and barge them, but it's not really a kind of it's a bit of a moot point, and it's something that I'm going to touch on in the second video. But for core mechanics, you need a hand free. So we've got our one-handed light hammer. That's a one-handed weapon. It's got oh no, sorry, I meant the let's go big, right? We're going to say the maul. So we've also got a D12 weapon. It's a two-handed weapon and it's got the shove trait. So this is where we're at. Now, why is that important? First action, we use the shove action and we make an athletics roll versus his fortitude defense, which is his fortitude plus 10. So it's kind of going to be equivocal. It's not going to be a really easy number, but neither's hitting him. Do you know what I mean? It's equivocal too. So the risk is similar, but the result could be much better. Now, if we beat his reflex, his fortitude defense, so that fortitude save plus 10, we move him back 5 feet. Well, why didn't you just take a 5-foot step and drink your potion? I'll tell you why. Because we're being smart and we know we've got advantage with our attack of opportunity and we need it. We need to maximize everything we can do to minimize his number of attacks against us and buy ourselves enough time to survive the fight and get the healer to heal us while he's kind of repositioning to react to the critical that I've just taken. Because again, you can't just always have the healer stood behind you going, heal, 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 buff, buff, buff. Doesn't work like that, does it? Things happen. So we're in that crisis situation. So we shove. We're gambling, but it's our best kind of modifier. We're throwing an athletics check at it. We've probably got a good athletics check. If we're a combated character, we've probably got a good athletics check, because it's built from the same mechanics that define most of our other traits. So it's very similar because we're using proficiency. So boom, we shove, we succeed, we move him back 5 feet. We then are at liberty to make a full move action, if we so choose, so that we can disengage without a provoking attack of opportunity. So we've got this maul, we've successfully shoved, 1 action. We choose to take a 5-foot step. Now we're 10 feet away. He can't take a guarded step. He has to use a move action, which will provoke, or use 2 guarded steps to move up to us without provoking if he's also playing smart. But what does that mean? Only 1 attack against us. We've used 2 actions. We've got 1 action left. We're a smart player. Our character has a bandolier. Really cool piece of equipment. Amazing piece of equipment. Items of a light bulk, aka potions, a whole like healer's kit or a whole toolcrafter's kit can go into and use up a whole bandolier. Lock picks can go in your bandolier. All those kind of little small items, right? With a bandolier on and items in it that count as readied now, drinking the potion is 1 action, not an interact action to get the potion out and then an interact action to drink it, because the drawing it from the bandolier and using it count as 1 action. We've been smart. We've been professional. So now we're in a situation where we have shoved him back 5 feet. We've disengaged from him to create more space to hopefully get off an attack opportunity if he moves in to provoke, wanting to get 2 attacks against us, because there's 10 feet, not 5 feet. And then we've drank a potion. Boom. We're back in the fight. And we've denied him either 1 attack, and we've gained an attack. Boom. Look at that, right? So he may get to make 2 attacks, but we're getting to make a reaction attack. So net value 1 for 1. Now we're level pegging, and now we're back in the fight. Or he's not very barbarian-y, because he's probably in a rage and he's not able to think clearly by rules definition unless he's got high-level class features which give him these abilities to momentarily shunt out of a rage and have clarity. Are very unlikely the DM's going to be doing that. He might, but it's very unlikely. So chances are he's going to move 10 feet and get 2 attacks. Hey, what does that mean? Attack of opportunity. Boom. We're back in the game. Now, what if we didn't have a maul and we had perhaps got a lighter weapon that wasn't two-handed? So let's have a quick look, see if we can find one. Warhammer, 1d8 bludgeoning, hammer, one-handed, shove. This is where it gets more interesting. If we had a shield and we had a hammer, you want to make sure you're always using one of your 3 actions to keep your shield raised, so that when he charged us with that critical hit, we'd have been able to use our reaction that round to soak some of that critical. And that's why shields are amazing in Pathfinder 2e. Again, they make combat really cool, because if you've got a shield, it's got damage reduction for you if you raise it and keep it raised. Not only does it buff your armor class, which is reducing someone's chances because of the beat by 10 system, you're essentially you're making it harder for them to get that beat by 10, because it means the roll has to be higher or a 20. So we're in this situation where he charged us, but we're smart, we've got a shield and we've got a warhammer. So now we can do the same thing. We don't have to worry so much, because we've been able to soak maybe 5, maybe 10 points of that critical hit with a shield. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's the difference between life and death in a big, long running kind of duel between you and another opponent. Boom. Now, same scenario, but slightly different. We've taken that critical. We can still shove 5-foot step, again, denying them actions, and drink a potion from the El Bandolero. Now, the shield's not raised. But we've gone through that same process of restoring hit points, getting ourselves kind of fueled up and getting ourselves kind of ready. You've got this kind of structure where you can think and be smarter with how you approach a fight. And that's very, very cool, especially when you start to get into, oh, well, what about this? What about that? What about the other? For example, if you've got a reach weapon, you can still use a reach weapon in facing combat. You don't have that kind of, you can't use it against adjacent foes rules that we've seen. Because quick shout outs to some brilliant kind of YouTube content if you want to kind of get a bit nerdy about kind of combat and kind of looking at, I suppose, a real basis for how your character might kind of act and behave. Scholar Gladiatoria, a great YouTuber, he does all about kind of medieval weaponry. Lindy Beige has done some brilliant ones about kind of sword and shields and why they were the mainstay of combat. Scholar Gladiatori did one very, very, I think literally the other day that I literally watched it yesterday, where he just talked in general terms about spear and shield and two-handed spear, and even a two-handed spear with a shield, because funnily enough, unlike what the book says, he's pretty confident, as are many other people that are very professional, very knowledgeable and work and use with real weapons in real life. You can use a long spear one-handed. It's just a bit clumsier, especially in a kind of pressing fight where it's actually disadvantageous. So other weapons kind of YouTubers that are worth a dabble in, there's Scalgrim. There's a one that I've just started following, who I'm going to kind of shout out in the next video. But Lindy Beige, Scholar Gladiatoria, Scalgrim, Shadversity. He does loads of cool stuff about armor and weapons from these kind of periods that can help you ground your character in why you should start thinking about combat and not just thinking, oh, well, I'll just stand and trade with this barbarian and try and throw 3 attacks at him. Because your first attack, probably going to hit. Second attack, -5. Third attack, -10. Unless you're using an agile weapon, -4, -8. But if you've taken a big hit, you don't want to stand and trade. And you certainly don't want to stand and trade against someone that's built to be a DPM monster. And barbarians are DPM monsters, where they rage and all the powers and abilities they get that really focus in on just Hulk smashing, literally in some instances. You don't want to stand and trade. You want to think, and you want to use movement, and you want to find ways of creating space. Yes, you'll get less attacks, but you're with a party, and the chances are the odds are to some extent stacked in your favour, unless your DM is an absolute bar steward and has literally gone, oh, you can fight 10 level 10 barbarians at level 4. It will be far. Oh, TPK, I didn't see it coming. Do you know what I mean? The chances are that if you are creating space and buying your character time, using movement and maneuver, such as shove or trip, flip it around. Same scenario. Charged by the barbar, critted, crisis, panic, looking at your sheets, barely any hit points left. But you're using which one is it? It's not the halberd, even though technically, and again, next video spoilers, technically you can. The Gusami is a pole arm with reach and trip. Now, if you're a fighter and he's charging, chances are you'll get an attack of opportunity in as he comes into combat with you, but then he still crits you. Oh my god, crisis. Hang on a minute. Trip him. Oh yes, I think I will. Bam. First action. Trip him. Now he's prone. He's got the flat-footed condition. He can't take attacks of opportunity. He takes a -2 on melee attacks. Now you can try and stand and dominate, but you've got reach. So you take a disengage action. You take a guarded step, 5 foot. You drink a potion. You're still plenty within reach. He's got to get up. Attack of opportunity. Thanks very much. He's got to take a 5 foot guarded step. Well, that's still one of his actions. He's down to 1 action. You're buying yourself time. You're creating space. You're being smart. So don't just default into trade. Oh, I'll dice trade. Dump, 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 dump. Because there's every opportunity, like with an ogre, classic example of something that can just really Hulk smash something, or a Minotaur, if it, again, these big monsters that are massively strong, especially when compared to a PC. You might be 16, strength 16, you might be strength 18, you might be really lucky and be strength 20. But the chances are that when a giant walks up to you and says, Hulk smash, with a big strength, trading becomes less appealing. So we're in that scenario where with this system, we can be creative. And you saying, hey, but Phil, ogre, it's large, can't do anything. Well, you can. And you can take a athletic skill feat, because like I said, we've not even started really getting into the nitty gritty of kind of the feat system. When we're looking at that, Titan Wrestler is a level 1 athletic skill feat. It enables us to essentially use things like grapple and trip on characters that are larger, significantly larger than our PC. So you can already see that with skill feats and with class feats and with weapons and their specific properties, like Backstabber, if they're flat-footed, and you're behind them, you get an extra d6 of damage as if you're a rogue. Disarm enables you to make disarm checks without having a free hand. Essentially, instead of trying to wrestle a weapon out of someone's hand like you would if someone put a gun on you and you would, like Chuck Norris or who else have I seen? Wesley Snipes. I've seen him kind of kung fu disarm people, right? Instead of using your hands, the weapon is probably hooked. So it enables you to kind of hook and drag a weapon out of someone's hands. So you can use all these like extra abilities that, like I said, even if you've only got simple weapon proficiency, you can get access to some. Mace, 1d6 bludgeoning, has the shove property. Sickle, often overlooked, agile, finesse, trip. Sure, it's only a d4, but if you're a character that's only got simple weapons proficiency, you're not going to be the damage king, right? You've probably got other things you can do, like a sorcerer. Hey, I've got simple weapons proficiency. The fighter's like, you can only do a d4 plus 1 damage. You're rubbish. All right, I'll fireball you. And then let's have a conversation about who's rubbish when you're on fire and I'm like, 100 feet away going, how's that working out for your greatsword, mate? Probably not well for him, unless he's got a really good reflex save or you rolled rubbish. The dice will always be the deciding factor that I can't control. And you can't either, by the way. But if we trip him, with a sorcerer, and someone's rushed us in combat, and we're thinking, oh my god, what am I going to do? Oh, hang on a minute, I've got a sickle. Instead of just kind of going, 1d4 plus 1, or 1d4 plus nothing if we're really low on strength, I'll try and trip him. Now, it's going to be hard to do, but so is hitting him. But the difference is, if you trip him, he falls prone, Bob's your uncle. What can you do? You can get away from him, and then someone else, like a fighter or someone else, can close on him and put the hurt on him before he can get back up and engage you, increasing their chances of critting him, which they'll thank you for. They won't. They'll be like, oh, did you see my amazing crit? That was all down to me. I'm amazing. And you'll be like, yes, fighter. Of course, me being the sorcerer and like fireballing him and then trip him over and then you finishing him off with a critical, I was nothing to do with that. Not that I'm bitter. But do you see where I'm coming from? You've got these great opportunities to kind of go, ooh, I've got options. And it's not just the primary combat characters that get these cool options because, like I said, they're kind of baked into weaponry as well as feat trees now, which is super. So you've got this really kind of crunchy kind of like, oh, I can do this, oh, I can do that. Scythe. Now, Scythe is a martial weapon, bizarrely, although tilling a field, I suppose, does not require... it's like a wheat sheaf has got an AC of -1 million. I roll a 1. You hit the wheat and it dies because it's got like 1 hit point, 0.001 of a hit point. Snap it with your finger. Scythe as a weapon is terrifying. Only costs 2 gold pieces, 1d10 slashing, 2-handed, polearm, deadly D10 and trip. What does deadly D10 mean? It means that if you score a critical hit, you add another D10. So if you crit with a normal scythe, that's 3d10. 1 normal, 1 for the critical, 1 for deadly. And suddenly you go from being Farmer Giles, who's also proficient with scythes because he's a farmer and a fighter because he took the farming background. Oh my God, the world's most double-R farmer. And you go, oh, get off my land. And someone says no. And then you roll a crit. You annihilate them or trip them and then annihilate them. Do both. Go crazy. Anyway, I hope that was informative and I hope that was useful. I hope it inspires you to think about avoiding the trade game and getting into the kind of thinking like a combatant game of how can I outfox my opponent? How can I outmaneuver my opponent? How can I, in a crisis, buy myself those precious seconds to create space to drink a potion or distract someone so that someone else can intersect them and protect me while I use my combat medic, or buy the time for the cleric to kind of get disengaged himself and go, I heal thee, the power of Pelor compels you to be more hit pointed and less dead. And then talk to me about it. Drop me some comments, let me know. Give me those juicy kind of combat scenarios you've been in where thinking smart using the 3-action economy saved your bacon. Drop me a like, drop me a sub, and I'll see you for part 2 of Kick-Ass Combat, where I'm going to talk about how we can create weapons. Oh, because we can, because one of my favourite weapons, the poleaxe, or poleaxe, which in one video was described as the AK-47 of the medieval knight's arsenal. Who doesn't want an AK-47? Well, obviously you can't have an AK-47 because it's a fantasy game, but you can have a poleaxe, and that is the equivalent for a knight. So we're going to talk about how we can create weapons using the rules established herein without being like cheesemongers, just creating extra weapons and extra flavour, and how we can add things and tweak things to make certain weapons perhaps more representative of their real world counterparts, because I'm not averse to that, and I do it in some of my homebrew games. And we're also going to look at things that we can do to really amp combat up, using, I suppose, the bones of what I've talked about in terms of being able to do things like trip with certain weapons and shove with certain weapons to actually create an even more fluid, dynamic, and quite aggressive, complicated. Actually, no, not really more complicated at all. Almost exactly the same. But the ability to kind of stack stuff up so you can really get into the next level of combat, which is part 2. So make sure you stick around and watch that. That'll be coming out hopefully later this week. With my shift pattern, it's quite hard to make kind of videos super regularly, but I'm going to keep it up. So hopefully later this week, Kick-Ass Combat Part 2. Like, subscribe, watch that video, watch this video. If you listen to me say that, you have done, well done. You earn 1 million fill points. They're worthless. They're like cryptocurrency, but even more worthless and meaningless. Stay safe, stay well, and remember, think like a fighter and kick ass in combat in Pathfinder 2E. Boom. Peace.